Hey guys, Sam here at NOIZ Studios. Before we even start mixing, there's a number of things that we should do to our session to help us navigate it further. If we can't find our way around our session, if we don't know what's where and how things are laid out, we're going to run into real trouble. And it's kind of like going into a dark room. You don't know what's there, you're trying to kind of figure stuff out, but it doesn't really make sense. So today I want to take a look at 5 things that I think you need to do before you even press play on your session. Let's check them out. Now, the first thing is to get all tracks in order and color code stuff. Now, I know this sounds really simple, but you'd be amazed at the amount of mix sessions that I receive where everything is just all over the place. Everything's called Audio 7 or Audio 35. I want everything to be named the right thing, specifically on the tracks. If my kick isn't called kick, I don't know it's a kick. If my kick isn't the same color as the rest of the drums, I don't know what family it lives in. So on Logic, there's an easy way of doing it. You can just press Option and C and it will bring up your color palette. On every other door, there's going to be a different way of doing it. But side note, I like to have my tracks the same color as my regions. I can't think of a single time when you would want your tracks in the mixer to be not the same color as your regions, but that's a different story altogether. I like to make sure everything is the same color in a certain family. So for me, my drums are always red. My guitars are always green, my vocals are always kind of a pinky purple kind of colour, bass is always brown, and keys are always going to be some sort of yellow. You're going to have your own way of doing this, and it's important to have a way that makes sense to you. But for me, colour coding my tracks and making sure everything is in order from top to bottom is my #1 way of organising my session. Secondly, I want to have everything in buses and groups. Now, you don't necessarily need a bus fader for absolutely every instrument. If your bass is just one channel, for example, you don't necessarily need a bus. You're just making more channels for yourself. But if you've got drums and you've got a number of instruments there, then you want them all going to one fader. And you want to have that fader control absolutely everything. It's really important for me to be able to navigate my session and just turn down all of the drums without selecting all of the faders. That just seems like a long-winded way of doing it to me. So before I even press play on any session, I'm going to be grouping all my instruments, sending them to a common fader, and I know I've got complete control. Thirdly, I want to set up all my effects sends. Now, there's a very good reason for this. You can do it later. If you want a bit of reverb on your vocal, you can press stop, create a new bus, put some reverb on it, and then send your track to that reverb. But you've pressed stop. You've been taken out of that creative moment of mixing and you've gone on to a bit of a monotonous task. I don't want that. I want all of the monotonous tasks to take place before I've started the creative process, before I've pressed play. So I'm going to create all of those effect sends. Even if I'm not going to use them, I want them there. It's better to have them there and not use them than be taken out of the creative process and have to make them further down the line. You can save these as presets within your DAW, or you can save them as part of a template. However you choose to do it is up to you, but for me, that's so important. Number 4 is one that is going to divide opinion. I always put a limiter on my master bus before I start any processing. There's a reason for that. I want to know what it's going to sound like when it's limited. I want to have a vague idea of what it's going to sound like when that limiting is in place, but I'm not always engaging the limiter. I'm putting the limiter in there and perhaps bypassing it for the entirety of the mix. Then I know that it's there, I can just pop it on and I can have a general idea of how something's going to sound when it's mastered, when it's brought up to that final level. I'm not interested in actually mastering it here, I'm interested in getting a kind of ballpark idea. Are my drums going to lose some of their punch? Are the vocals going to lose a bit of clarity once that limiting is engaged? If you've got it at the end of your session, you know it's always there, so you can just click it on and get a ballpark idea of how it's going to sound in the master. Number 5 is one that I never do any session without, and it's to do with a utility plugin. I'm always going to put a gain plugin in the last insert slot of every single channel. That includes buses, that includes effect sends, absolutely everything. Why? Well, for me, I don't like to lose control of my fader. As soon as I start automating faders, I then can't grab a fader and bring it down or bring it up. That's no use to me. That's kind of the opposite of what a fader is all about. So by automating gain plugins last in the chain, it means that you're changing the overall level of that track, but you're not losing control of the fader. Equally, you're not putting the gain plugin first in the chain, so you're not changing the level going into any compressors or gates or anything like that. It's last in the chain for a reason. It's after any processing has taken place, and it's just acting as another volume control, but meaning you don't lose control of your volume control. Those are the 5 things for me that I find so important before I've even pressed play on my mix. I don't want to be taken out of the creative process of mixing with mundane tasks. I set them all up before I start, or even put them on a template so that I can just drag my tracks into that template and I'm ready to go with no distractions from my creativity. I hope that's useful for you. Let me know what you do before you start a session. I'll see you again soon. Take care.